Hey Kiki, hello Kiki. This is Dada. Dada saying, I love you. I love my little boy Kiki so much. He's the best boy in the universe.
Interesting now is if you start to engage from this perspective of, I have had a powerful spiritual meditation psychedelic experience, and you want to share that with somebody down the hall, today you're going to find somebody else down the hall who gets it. A lot of people are having these kinds of powerful spiritual opening experiences.
Days for doggy. Look, he's doing what you were doing before. He's like hiding and looking through the D.
Everything is a teaching from a mature place, what it means to be part of an interconnected planet where human consciousness is responsible for maintaining the balance of life.
Monkey. Little monkey. That's right.
Happy birthday, I love you. Happy birthday, I love you. Happy birthday, I love you. Happy birthday, I love you.
You know, I used to spend a lot of time with my dad in his office.
Yeah.
It's just how it went.
Yeah.
And so I got to know a lot of these characters.
That's. Mickey, where are you going?
I was very close to my father as a young person, and he was completely absorbed in the movement of those days, which, he was very well connected with everybody in that scene. You know, whether it was the writers he published like Jack Kerouac, William Burroughs, Allen Ginsberg, a lot of the Beat generation, people. They also, published a lot of the European sort of avant-garde figures at that time that were sort of fed into that scene in various ways, whether it was Samuel Beckett or Harold Pinter or various Nobel Prize winners later.
Down he goes.
That's a profound spiritual place to be. To see that and hold it and deal with the consequences of that. What does it mean for my own life? And what does it mean for the lives of everybody around me?
I was informed by email, very happily, to discover that my father, Fred Jordan, was given a Lifetime Achievement Award for acts unspecified, which is a wonderful, beautiful thing. So, publishing books by people like Malcolm X, where his original publisher was afraid to publish his book because he had been shot, and so Deep Sixed the book. And there are many, many examples like this.
The cultural left understood that people affiliate with a social change movement because it resonates with the way their body vibrates, that it touches them deeply on a cultural and spiritual level, and that it's not the rational argument that gets people to come on board and really participate in change. People are feeling a strong affiliation with a way of being that resonates in their soul. Well, one of the things that I really learned from those mentors, really, from Ginsberg, from Richard Foreman, from my father, and their friends, was how powerful culture is in changing consciousness, which changed society. So I was going through my own personal sense of like, well, this is where I want to be in the world, and how do I bring this into the world? So I'm just going to focus on that.
Are all aboard, many more of them live next door, and the band begins to play.
We're living in an extraordinarily beautiful and joyful place that's available to us at any moment, no matter what your actual physical environment is.
You want to see
going on?
I'll
How
take
do
you
conduct
back.
yourself? You gonna wave?
Do you want to read some
Wave
books?
Yeah, very good.
Wow. Welcome, everybody. My name is Elaine Mason. I was incredibly blessed to have a close friendship with Ken for 30 years. And the quality of his, I want to first bring into the room tonight, was his capacity for amazement. When I met him in publishing circles in the 1990s, it was like he didn't know that as an intellectual, you're supposed to be blasé. You know, he was amazed by everything. And he was the coolest person there was. He was so much cooler than all those blasé intellectuals. He was amazed by poetry and art and theater and the city and the wild people he knew. And on the rare occasions we could get him out into nature, he was amazed that it was still there. And so it had just been there waiting for him to come out and rediscover it. As you saw, he was amazed by his amazing son, Keon, and by the creativity of his friends whom he nurtured and fostered in their creativity. I think that he's, in a way, we're celebrating him as a kind of secular saint tonight because of his extraordinary capacity to expand the lives and creations of others. And there's a moment of amazement of his that I remember very clearly. That was like a four-part harmony of amazement that included horror. And it was when I spoke to him as soon as I could after on 9/11, and he was on his way back from Canada. And he said on the New York Thruway, there was a huge billboard that said, New York City closed. And he laughed, and this laugh had in it every level of, of horror and amazement and fear and gratitude at still being able to talk to a friend and to be together with friends. And that's kind of how I felt when I got the message from my husband that he was very sick in the hospital. It was really like hearing New York City closed. And especially, the next day when we got that news, it's impossible to accept. But we are here among friends, and it is amazing. It's amazing to be here. He would be amazed to see everyone here, and we are all going to do the best we can to fill the room with the creativity of his friends, those who loved him. And one of his oldest of those friends is our beloved Andrew Boyd.
Thank you, Elaine. Hey, everyone. Elaine and I are doing a little very minimalist co-MC tonight. It's an honor. Thank you all for being here. I met Ken in college, early 80s, University of Michigan. We were in the same dorm. We hit it off. We had, as you can imagine, many late night, coffee-fueled, wide-ranging conversations about art and politics, and then every once in a while we would actually do some art and politics, often inspired by Abby Hoffman, who we found out that Ken actually knew. He is underground royalty, after all. Abby, while still on the FBI's most wanted list, had sought refuge in the Jordan home in Westchester. Yes, Ken did grow up in a radical left-wing safe house, which might explain a lot. So back to campus and being inspired by Abby Hoffman, we took over a military research laboratory, but not in a hippie '60s kind of way, but in a 80s pop culture, and this is very much Ken's sort of ideas at work, ironic way, pretending to be members of a pro-Cold War cult that we invented called the Nuclear Saints of America. And we dressed in lab coats that we'd stolen from the university hospital a few nights before the action, dark sunglasses, Walkman headsets, which were sort of very new at that time. And we took over the lab, and we each brought our own individual volunteer military research project. The one I most remember was a woman in our team who was knitting a nose cone warmer in the school colors, stitching in goat blue and everything. Yes, and we showed up and we announced, we are here to do military research, and we are not going to leave until we get some done. And, pretty brilliant theatrical motivation for staying in the lab and preventing business as usual from happening. So there's Ken's mind at work. And so this was just all, it had a kind of a hilarious, spectacular effect on campus and really put military research at the center of people's attention. So it was very successful. And it was a great example of Ken's countercultural genius, an early example at work. And it had a foundational effect on me, sort of shaping my sensibility for years to come. We both sort of fell back to New York after college. I think we shared a pretty sublet of a sublet of a sublet, and in St. Mark's and Avenue B, and became good friends. And so he was around when the Billionaires for Bush was happening, and he actually had a very profound influence on it, even though it was a bit behind the scenes. He saw that it could go far beyond the sort of street theater agitprop that it was at, and that it had the promise of being the next sort of political identity movement, right? Where like the super rich coming out of the closet, in a sense. So, and he and I were riffing on this just a few blocks away on a stoop in East Village. It was the spring of 2000, and we were coming up with verbiage like, we're here, we're fabulously wealthy, get used to it. For many years now, we've ruled the world from behind the tinted glass of our limousines, but we're stepping out into the spotlight that we deserve. We're out and we're proud. So he sort of reimagined this. And it was just two guys shooting the shit, catching up on their lives in the East Village. And all these beautiful ideas coming forth, and just another great example of Ken being a mensch and helping his friends' projects just blossom. Ken also introduced me to Elaine, and I wouldn't probably have any books in the world right now if he hadn't done so. And so I owe Ken everything for the two hats that I wear in the world. And now, he's not here. And I think everybody has a story, their own story of this, where, we loved this man, we admired him, he changed our lives in small and great ways, and he's no longer with us. Whether, he was your brother, or your husband, or your father, or a colleague, or a good and generous friend. We miss him dearly. And we, I think, all have probably a Ken Jordan-sized hole in our hearts. And we are here today to honor him, to celebrate him, and all the beauty that he brought into the world. And there's no better place to be doing that than here in St. Mark's Church, which was Ken's sort of spiritual home ground. And because Ken was so engaged in so many different realms, from comics to publishing to music to poetry to reinventing the internet to pioneering visionary culture. We have a lot of people here with stories and poems songs to share. So if you're not on the official program but have a story to share, we have a legacy channel that friends and family have set up. If it's in the program, please, add your story there. If you are on the program, Lane and I would like to ask you to just be mindful of the time so that we have a chance to tell the full tapestry of Ken's story and still have some time left over for us all to mingle after we're done. We love you, Ken. Miss you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Back to Elaine to introduce our first presenter. Thank you, guys.
Everybody is listed basically in order of appearance in your program, so there won't in general be introductions, but this particular reader offers a wonderful little biographical anecdote about Ken. In 1985 or so, Ken attended the Naropa Institute in Boulder to study poetry with Allen Ginsberg. There, he met Nina Zavancevic, winner of the National Award for Poetry in Yugoslavia. He went with Nina to travel around Yugoslavia and called his family to announce that they had gotten married in Belgrade by the last remaining rabbi in Yugoslavia. He said they were instant celebrities appearing in the press, which he loved. Nina currently lives in Paris and is unable to attend this evening. She has asked author, actor, theater director, and member of the Alchemical and Living Theaters, Jessica Sloat, to read her poem for Ken.
So Nina sent me this poem. The title is Ani Ohevet Otcha, which means thank you or I love you in Hebrew. Tonight, I remembered how hard it was for me to live with you in foreign places, where no sound of familiar music rang, and in my ears dwelled dryness of lonely years, populated with unfriendly faces of familiar habits and streets. I thought I could never be close to you again, as I never was, but pretended to like your determined ways of saying things straight, tongue-in-cheek, they would say. But then, like in a W.C. Williams poems, my eye fell on a box full of stale matzahs. And they were not cold, nor salty, nor holy, but similar to my feeling, which is crisp. And the simple feeling I had in that old homey temple when I said I'd love you forever in Hebrew. And you said you did not understand a single word of the language I spoke.
Hi, I am Lynn Jordan. We are here to celebrate my brother, Ken. So I wanted to offer the perspective of what it was like for Ken to be a member of the Jordan family. And to do that, I would love to just acknowledge my mother, Sven. Do you have a picture of my mom? So that's my mom. Hi, Mom. And I'd like to also acknowledge my father, Fred. There he is. I really miss my dad right now. Fred was born Alfred Rotblat in Vienna, Austria. And Kristallnacht, which was the night that Hitler's army came to Austria, was the night of my father's bar mitzvah. And he survived the war, ended up in New York in 1949, and through kind of miraculous luck, was hired by Barney Rossett at a small publishing company, Grove Press, which was incredible because he had what was equivalent to a 7th grade education, and English was not his native language. He was a remarkable man. This is a little bit of what it was like to be in the Jordan family. In 1972, my dad came home for dinner, which is what he did every night, and very nonchalantly at the dinner table said, "So the CIA is likely bugging our phone. You want to be careful about what you say. Lenny, drink your milk." And I was 6 years old at the time. I didn't use the phone much. My brother, who was 10, was on the phone every day, arguing with his friends about which comic book was the best that week, which cover was the best, which story was the best, which line, oh, you artists know line things, and then which inking was the best, every day. And so we thought about what the CIA agent was actually listening to and the education that he was getting or she was getting. And our family shared one of the biggest laughs together that we ever had. So it was the CIA bugging our phone that brought the Jordan family together. Yeah. And a few years later, as Andrew has already mentioned, a friend of my father's came to stay with us multiple times. His name was Barry, and he was manic. And this was Abby Hoffman, because aiding and abetting a criminal on the FBI most wanted list is exactly what a father should be doing when he has a young family. So when Barry was around, Ken also became really manic. So the two of them together created this maelstrom of energy in the house. Now, Abby Hoffman was a big fan of the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders. And for the first time ever, the Jordan family watched American football. And my brother would cheer so ferociously, and he had this cap. It was a yellow cap made of like corduroy, and he enthusiastically tossed his cap into the rafters of the house, and which was basically an impossible thing to do. And so we had to get a ladder and get up and retrieve the hat, but it also caused so much laughter for the family. And he was cheering again, and he accidentally did the exact same thing because he had phenomenal aim. My brother possessed athletic ability, and he also loved to play ping pong. So did Abby Hoffman. And so they would play ping pong, and the emotional outbursts that happened on the ping pong table reverberated throughout the whole house. And then later, when my brother was a budding journalist in 1989. He sat down Abby Hoffman for an exclusive, very long interview for this alternative magazine, and I apologize to the person in the room who actually knows what that magazine was. I feel like it was called Alt Delete, Control Alt Delete. And I believe that it was one of Abby's last interviews. I could share so much about Ken. But I'll just say that this was a guy who emphatically was connected to his opinions, which to him were fact. And he was unwaveringly able to jump off of that idea. And it says to me that when he was interested in something, he had such clarity of vision about what was right about it. And he followed that path in all different directions, which I think is why so many people are here tonight. Because we got a taste of him in all of the different directions. And I love that you're here. I love that you are celebrating him with me. So thank you.
So one Friday night in May of 2000, I got an email from a friend who was going to be speaking at this conference in the Presidio that night. And fortunately for me, the Presidio was on my way. And that became, one of the most consequential serendipities of my life. It led to lasting relationships and working with people like these guys and Ken. And, Planet Work was an amazing amalgamation of thinkers and doers who were gathered together to kind of think, how could the internet and the web accelerate positive social change? And at the end, Elizabeth and I were talking about how can we carry this forward and actualize some of this stuff, and got excited about convening a smaller cohort of people to do that. And immediately I thought of Neil, and that became the beginning of the web cabal. And I'll let Neil talk about what from there.
So before that had happened, just mere weeks in this serendipitous, very Ken kind of way, I lived on the Upper West Side, went to a party, Upper West Side. I meet this guy, I find out it's Ken, and within 30 minutes I found out he was a big guy with SonicNet, MediaChannel.org. He had a book coming out, the wonderful, Multimedia compilation. He was friends with Allen Ginsberg. He'd worked with Richard Foreman, and he was a huge fan of Douglas Engelbart, who I'd barely known. But at the end of 30 minutes, I realized subsequently that I had been initiated into the kind of keepers of the flame of Douglas Engelbart by Ken at that moment. He convinced me without knowing it. And so I, at that time, had been done the Live from Off Center series. I was working with the Rockefeller Foundation on digital projects and looking out for new talent. I always have my sensors open, and I was like, I have to remember Ken. I'm not quite sure with this incredibly diverse background he had, what that would even mean. And then Brett calls me like it's meant to be, and I'm like, let's meet Ken when you come to town. So Ken wanted to go to El Quijote. We spent 3 hours and it was amazing. And then it was like Ken's part of this web cabal. And we quickly got it together between all of us and, this great kind of community. We found 20 people. We had a session in the Redwoods in Ben Lomond where the hobbits run around, I think. And we had an amazing session, and it was like lightning. And if you could put some of the beach photos up, you know, we went out on the beach after 2 days and we're like, lightning had struck, you know, what hit us? What did we just do? You know, and Ken was a big part of it. I think he kind of schooled us with his deep cultural literacy and technological expertise. And I'm going to put this flower down for a second because out of this came a 2-year effort to do research for what became the augmented social network, building identity and trust into the next generation internet, which is a mouthful. And but Ken had been appointed one of the 3 people to do this. And as a writer with the research effort, I'm going to read the precepts of the augmented social networks to give you an idea. This was 24 years ago, before Facebook, before LinkedIn, and it was persistent identity in the public interest, interoperability, breaking down walled gardens, matching technologies, brokering systems with taxonomies and folksonomies about language in a web search environment. It was a social operating system that was a service to the field that we put out there in which Ken led. And that was an amazing artifact of history that Ken did, was the primary author of it with us helping. But one of the things, you know, all of you know how great he is, but this is an amazing thing that not many people even know he did. And it's pretty amazing. And my friends here will tell you more about that.
I'm not sure I'm going to tell you more about that, but I am going to just say that, first of all, Carmel, Lynn, thank you for gathering us. This is really special. And for those of you who didn't follow that last piece from Neil, imagine the chaos, the sea of ambiguity that we were all swimming in for a very long time, trying to kind of land this kind of spaceship of ideas. And I think there's a lot to say about Ken as a father, as a friend, but in this particular context, one of the things that I really feel is his artistry, was his ability to hold that space of total chaos, intellectual chaos, recognize a brilliant idea, really see it, tease it out, and then singularly land it and render it in incredibly lucid language for those who did not drink a lot of Kool-Aid, could understand. And because he had that singular capability, this publication came out and it's had a significant amount of impact. And that is absolutely to Ken. So it was an honor and privilege to be in that world with him and all of you.
Well, I knew Ken through 2 very different worlds over a long time. When I first met him through the professional context of Web Cabal and Link Tank, I didn't really mention my couple of decades of plant medicine Kool-Aid. And I don't even know when it was, maybe a decade ago, we became closer friends again. I would see him every time I came to the city. And I was continuing to kind of carry the torch for what he had outlined in the Augmented Social Network white paper. And it continued to work on building technology to fulfill this vision. And at one point a few years ago, we built a platform called True, and he immediately wanted to put Lucid News on it, and it wasn't really quite ready. And then in the last year, he was writing for us in J-Link, in my company, and it was writing about the kind of legacy that comes from what he started 25 years ago. And we'd gotten very close. My whole team was close with him, and when he was, we were both at the Eclipse in different places, but we're texting and calling back and forth, and I miss him very much, and I really feel like I've lost my brother. And I'm also honoring the depth of what he offered in that technical world. And then I spent a lot of time with him also talking about how we hold plant medicines and the medicalization of that world, and how we hold community, and how do we hold community and technology together, which was this sort of theme that ran through all of these things. With that, I'm going to introduce Surya, who's going to talk a little bit about where that lineage is going.
That's yours. Can we have a whale, please? There should be a whale. I am so honored to be here and to share in this moment of grief and celebration and joy and respect and the inspiration for the Legacy Channel. And that this man, he wrote the ASN white paper, and this man built technology that can help our society. And True is a whale of a community environment to support connection and engagement at a whole new level for the internet. So it is the intent to bring forward the vision that this man has inspired in so many individuals. And it is my honor to be a steward for True and a support to say that this Legacy Channel is the first of its kind on True, and we're looking forward to having each of you add, participate, engage in the gift that he gives in that part of what it means to honor, to celebrate, and to feel, and to engage. And with that, it is my pleasure to say thank you to Carmel. One of the reasons why I'm up here is because of mission-driven intentions that are ignited in relationships and connection. And really, when I was thinking about sharing, I was thinking about Keon. And I was thinking about what it means to have a legacy, and for that legacy to be a part of each of you, and how we grow into remembering and supporting and engaging through feelings, through the heart, through the memories, through the visions. And this channel has been created for you. And with that, I hand it over to the next person, wherever they are.
So happy to be here with all of y'all. I don't want to say much. I was lucky to have worked with Ken on so many different things, and to have been a recipient of his generosity and support and mentorship and guidance. And that involved creating music and albums and poetry and writing and videos and releasing them, and envisioning networks to connect us around the world. So to his unparalleled ability to be amazed, as Elaine said, I'll sing this song. There is a song the angels sing in heaven high above, to praise the Lord of the universe and every atom of love. A melody so beautiful, more powerful than words. The cage bird sings and justice rings whenever it is heard. A song that reaches high and low, enriching all the same. An ark of no to bow the heads of tyrants in shame. Oh, so beautiful, Glory, glory, oh so beautiful. Amen. The lovers taste it when they kiss, the blind who hear can see, the deaf they know each word by. The song sets us free. The children know the truth despite the lies that they've been told. The future will be in their hands when this world's dead and cold. And somewhere on a distant star, they sing this song as well, in hopes that someday harmony throughout the spheres will dwell. Oh, so beautiful. Glory, glory. Oh, so beautiful. Amen. Amen. The meek and poor, it says, will rule the world one day. The children and the animals will finally have their say. But the truth is they already do. The ancient scriptures lie. We all know that the voiceless have creation on our side. A melody so sweet and a victory so strong. Every single atom in the heavens sings its song. Oh, so beautiful. Glory, glory. Oh, so beautiful. Amen. Amen. Amen.
Yeah, wow, that was incredibly powerful. So much. I'm John Torn, and I'm here to just talk about the friendship between my family, Torn family, and Ken, my brother Tony, my sister Angelica, and my sister-in-law Leanne. Gonna hear from in a minute. I guess it was during one of our raucous, crazy New Year's Eve parties up at the Torn Page Space in Chelsea that may have first met Ken. You know, I'm not sure, but as soon as he did, it just seemed to be kind of a part of our scene, really a central part of our scene, and how that happened. There could be many reasons. I think that we shared, fascination with the interrelationship of art, politics, and spirituality. Could be that we also came from a family of folks who are really involved with 60s and 70s counterculture. I believe we were told that our phones were bugged too growing up. And I'm sure Abby passed through our homestead like once or twice. And so he just kind of fit right in. And just all of a sudden, I've always considered him a personal mentor, but I think he was a mentor for all of us. He was just kind of our house philosopher, in a sense. He was just always the person who kind of, knew what was happening, knew where we were going next, and could always get us all, involved in something, whether it was, avant-garde theater or Church of Ayahuasca, all things just sort of became, a connection, and he was the one making those connections. It was pretty amazing. I mean, I think Tony and Angelica, my
brother and sister could probably go into, tell all sorts of stories of all the stuff that he was involved with them. Obviously, can't be here, of course, but he was just very important for all of us. For me, I think the main thing was that he just was really interested in, what I could do to be involved with what he was doing. He was always just really open to that and asked me to do stuff. So whether it was back in the 90s with SonicNet or more recently with Revolver or Reality Sandwich, I always had time to, if you need to do some copy editing or some reviews or stuff like that, or, publishing stuff, he was always just reaching out to me, even though I haven't lived in regularly in New York City, has not been my home base for 30 years. I always felt that was a part of the scene here because he was always reaching out and doing it for me. And I try to do my part in return to kind of bring Ken to where I was. So I don't know if Randall Packard is here. This is a great book, you guys. And I've had my graduate students reading this for the past 15 years. It's a communication, technology, and society seminar. And we always start off with this book, and just the idea behind it, just the conception of it, just kind of shows the kind of collaborations that Ken was, looking to do, kind of outside the box. The idea that you're going to take some of the founders of the net and hyperlinks and all this stuff, people like Vinay Bush and Tim Berners-Lee, and kind of connect them with Wagner and poetry and avant-garde art and performance art, just kind of mashed it all together. It's really just a great way to get people thinking differently about technology. Technology as poetry, technology is poetry. It's just a great way to frame things. So I'm just trying to do my part to keep, spreading the word about, the way that can frame things. And it's incredible gift for collaboration and for reaching out and bringing people together, which he clearly is doing today. Thank you.
Hey everybody, my name is Michael Robinson, and I'm one of the co-founders of Reality Sandwich and Evolver. So Ken knew that I had zero interest in public speaking and a complete aversion to it. And based on that, he signed me up to do panels around the country. I want to, thanks to Ken's encouragement, I've been able to address thousands of people around the world about art, design, culture, and civic engagement. And standing here today, it's clear that he was training me for this moment. Thanks, Ken. It is an honor, and I'm still conscious. And in a moment like this, I'm reminded of a night that through Reality Sandwich, we had Alejandro Jodorowsky come and speak in Chelsea. And hanging out with Alejandro, he's like, "What are you up to this weekend?" And I said, "I'm going to address 5,000 people in Argentina." And he said, "What are you speaking about?" And I told him, and he told me, "Throw it away." And I did, much like the thing I did today. I've written it 1,000 times, but strangely, the person that I rely on most to edit my work is Ken. So I blame him for anything that doesn't go well with my writing. If this was a visual exercise, we would have nailed it by now. I'm also glad to be here speaking on behalf of my wife, Sarah, who is with all of us. She couldn't be here tonight, but absolutely adored Ken and his family. And I just want to say, for me, it really started with books. When I met Ken and Carmel, I was in their apartment and I was just surrounded by books. And it was one of those moments where not only was I surrounded by books, but it was so clear that they had read them all. And Ken, being humble the way he was like, most. So over the years of knowing him, I realized he lied to me. He really had read them all and could almost verbatim bring them back. WTF, Ken. That was my nickname for him. And it really stood for What's the Frequency, Kenneth? Which was an REM reference. But it was always nice to say WTF in meetings. And people would look at him like, is something going on? Did I miss something? But clearly, there's no reality left in our sandwich. In 1992, I got a job working for an illustrator in Union Square, and she said she would give me the job on one condition. She said she warned me that one of the tenants in the building was definitely going to sexually harass me, and like everybody that worked for her, that she begged me not to quit. And sure as everything, I would be in the elevator, and this guy would woo me with poetry and songs and do these obscene dances when we were alone in the elevator. And it was always, and that was my introduction to Allen Ginsberg. When I met Ken and was in his apartment and I saw all these books, he was like, so what are we going to name the company? And he goes, Reality Sandwich, after my dear Uncle Allen. Much like being in the elevator, I kept my mouth shut and said nothing. I just let the theatrics unfold. Our first office was on the Bowery, which was across from Warhol's, the illustrator's office that I worked in was across the street from Warhol's old factory, which relates to the fact that when we moved to the Bowery, one of Andy Warhol's former assistants, the artist Ronnie Cutrone, gave us our first office space. Some people considered it a drug den. Some people considered it an incubator for insanity. It somehow was one of those spaces where I would be calmly sitting at my desk and open the door, and Mick Rock, the photographer, would blast in and completely throw off all of our writing deadlines and work, because suddenly we were in the presence of rock and roll royalty. 120 Walker Street, Sound Lab's address. I used to go hang out at events there, and that brings Paul Miller and DJ Spooky and my experience of working on the being part of Sound Lab's visuals for the 1999 Whitney Biennial. Evolver was a lesson in contracts and exchange, and I'd say that in our ideals, I really learned about the energetic signature of money. It was a lesson in the creative force and the power of sharing a vision. And Reality Sandwich was wild from birth. And as one of the core four, one of my business partners was known for dressing as a Revolutionary Era patriot. The other co-founder wrote a 2012 themed book that inspired this Sting to write the song Don't Stand So Close to Me about him. And that 2012 book led countless people to somehow think I wanted to hear their psychedelic experience. Apparently, I got known as Don't Piss Him Off, he will instantly turn into Lou Reed if you mention the word my shaman said. And then there was Ken, who I'd say was the most dangerous out of all of us because he blended in. And one of my mentors once said, the surrealists wore suits. And Ken really embodied that. Nobody knew that they were with one of the most tripped people, one of the most like sitting next to a countercultural library. And he just honestly looked like a banker. Ken and I saw ourselves as sculptors. And we did it in the sense of like Joseph Boy's relationship to the social sculpture, where you use thoughts, actions, objects, and ideas to influence and shape society and the environment. Through Reality Sandwich, Evolver, a magazine, 50 local groups, retreats, online educational platform, a book imprint, and panels. That sculpture had its DNA in sex, drugs, rock and roll, literature, and Helvetica. Reality Sandwich somehow, unbelievably, attracted some of the most influential and intelligent people that I could never have foreseen when I said yes to hanging out with this lot. First people on the scene were Sean Parker, Sean Lennon, Yoko Ono, Mick Rock, Genesis Peorage. Douglas Rushkoff, Doblin, Rick Doblin, Paul Miller, Donna Karen, Sting, and most importantly, you. I was the first person to leave the company, and it was a joy because I actually sold my share of the company to an art collector. So to me, I sold my share of the social sculpture. And like everything, it all comes back to books. And a few weeks ago, unbeknownst to me, I was asked to go to an event in Midtown, and I didn't ask where, what the address was, and I was just led to a room that turned out to be Ken Jordan's library. And it was in that moment that I realized of like, wow, like he guided me across the city. He's here now. He's ever present for me. And I want to thank you all for being part of Ken's story. And through us and through everything, I'm ready. I truly am finally processing it. I'm ready to see how this story continues through your efforts. And I'm sure that the tale is one of the more beautiful world we all know is possible. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Leanne Brown, and I have lots of stories, but I'm not going to tell them, except I will write them down. But I want to say thank you to Ken for so many fun evenings of partying and pleasure and poetry. And I want to thank him for getting one of my first gigs when I was working the poetry project up there in the office. And I didn't have a computer yet in 1987 or so. He got me to type Richard Foreman's plays for the Unbalancing Act. You can see Leanne Brown thanked in the front of the book. I was like 20-something years old, and I think now I've made it. New York City, here I come. Anyway. And one of the great things about that job was that I saw how badly Richard Foreman spelled. And I was like, oh, you can not know how to spell and be a genius. So it's like, Ken was welcoming me into this cross-pollination of love for poetry and community. So with that, I wanted to have a little party for Ken. Okay, you're free to sway about or join in if you know this song. Okay. I would just move to offer this for Ken. All right. Do you realize that you have the most beautiful face? Do you realize we're floating in space? Do you realize that happiness makes you cry? Do you realize that everyone you know someday will die? And instead of saying all of your goodbyes, let them know you realize the time goes fast. It's hard to make the good things last. You realize the sun doesn't go down, it's just an illusion caused by the world spinning round. Do you realize that everyone you know someday will die? And instead of saying all of your goodbyes, let them know you realize that life goes fast. It's hard to make the good things last. You realize the sun doesn't go down, it's just an illusion caused by the world spinning round. Do you realize? Yes. Do you realize you have the most beautiful face?
Hi. Hi, my name is Faye Sacaritas, and this is Ann Harrison. Ken was our friend and colleague, and together with the two of us, Marisa Sturtz and Chris Swink, a co-founder of Lucid News online news service. We are journalists who cover psychedelic research, therapy, business, culture, and spirituality. Ken believed deeply in the transformative power of psychedelics for global healing. He also passionately believed in the importance of accurate and accessible information about psychedelics and the value of inclusive global psychedelic communities. As managing editor of Lucid News, I talked to Ken almost every working day for 4 years. Ken had courage and a vision to bring conversations about mostly illegal substances into the mainstream. He wanted to tell stories about new therapies and both traditional and contemporary spiritual practices with psychedelics. He never lost his sense of humor or his dedication to the work. When Ken died, we had to make a decision whether to continue Lucid News. We had a growing number of readers seeking balanced information about psychedelics, and Ken's vision for Lucid was to mainstream these ideas, and that has been realized. Just yesterday, the New York Times published a front-page story about military veterans seeking treatment for brain injuries with the psychedelic compound ibogaine. We decided to continue reporting and publishing, and we knew that's what Ken would have wanted. Together with Ken's friend Simeon Schnapper, we formed a nonprofit, Lucid News Community Media, to help fund the news service. There are many stories that we want to cover, and we are publishing an increasing number of opinion pieces from therapists and researchers who want to share their insights. But it's been a challenge. There are now many more projects focused on psychedelics than there were when we founded Lucid in February of 2020. Most of the funding in this space is provided by a relatively small group of people. I've taken on Ken's role as editorial director, but I've had to reach into my own retirement savings to fund myself. So why continue? It's a fair question. Well, we are reaching out to funders who will help us, we believe. But we also believe that if there was ever a time in history when a free and independent press was needed, that time is right now. And Lucid News is part of that. The groundbreaking reporting that we are doing represents this, and this was also Ken's vision. Journalists speak truth to power. They hold influential people and organizations accountable. And despite threats against reporters, defamation lawsuits, and the closure of many community newspapers, a free press is essential to the well-being of all communities, and it is worth fighting for. It's the cornerstone of democracy. We welcome your support, and we know that wherever Ken is, he's out there working remotely, covering the story. And we feel his presence, and we miss him. Thank you very much.
I started as an intern at Reality Sandwich and Devolver in 2012 when I was just 22. I actually got college credit for it, which Ken really loved. He thought that was really funny. And I've accompanied Ken on a slew of projects in the psychedelic space ever since for over a decade, with Lucid News being the most recent. I met Ken when I was young, and throughout the years, he's been a mentor, a colleague, and a friend. As Annie has already beautifully articulated, Ken was a powerhouse to work with. He was remarkably passionate about his work and his vision for the psychedelic space. And any support for Lucid News is support for Ken's legacy and what he cared about most outside of his family. Ken's work persona is vividly etched in my mind, of course, but when I think about him, it's more often about our friendship. The books we would talk about, music, art, media, comics, we would go to the theater together. I remember coming into my office to find a record by my favorite composer on my desk, a birthday gift from him. We would talk about our personal lives and the heartfelt advice he was always happy to give to me in the middle of a busy workday. I can't tell you how many times Ken has helped me get out of my head because I'm there a lot. And he knew me well, and he was just really, we clicked, and he was great at just bringing me back to my body and getting me to lighten up. Like Michael, I had a really big fear of public speaking, and he knew I hated it. He was always encouraging me to do it, and I think that he is getting a very mischievous delight out of just how much public speaking I've done on his behalf since his passing. The past 6 months have been very strange, as I've been consciously and subconsciously processing the loss of such an integral figure in my adult life, someone who played a really strong and prominent role in it. I see him in my dreams coming out of crowds and the subway and city sidewalks, and I grieve and weep for him deeply there. When maybe I'm too busy in my waking life to process my emotions, my subconscious is still working hard at it. Ken shone with such a bright light of optimism, such a fervent desire to see the highest potential in everyone in every situation. The last time Ken and I spoke in person was earlier this year. We met up for coffee at Union Square Park, and he was brimming with enthusiasm about the youngest generation of poets that he'd seen here. And he was so excited to see young artists meet in person and not digitally, and inspired by the social and political activism in their poetry. I've been carrying Ken's light with me in my heart. I often hear him countering my darker, more cynical thoughts with that twinkle in his voice and eye, just like he did during all our conversations. I carry his enchantment and love affair with the world with me. I miss him very much. I feel I can't help but think about all the things I had yet to learn from him that I didn't, and that I didn't know that sitting there in Union Square Park was going to be the last hour-long conversation we had, just sprawling conversation about everything and anything. I'm very grateful to have had him in my life and to have his spirit. And I'm really grateful to everyone here to be in this space together and celebrate him and honor his life. Thank you so much, Carmel and Lynn, for creating this space. Love you, Ken.
Wow, so moving. Wonderful. Faye, Annie, thank you. My name is Carmel Kudos. I am Ken's parenting partner. And we've had a long relationship spanning 2 years, I can't remember, 2003 we met. Thanks to this guy, Stephen Taylor, and his partner, Judy Hussey Taylor, I met Ken at a Bugs show, which was really cool. And that's the part of our meeting that Ken really loved, that we met at a Bugs show. And I just remember how it's so easy. It was so easy to talk to him. Just a good friend. You could say anything and he wouldn't bat an eye. He would be right there, kind of just with you, kind of gliding along. And all the beautiful things that these are not just friends, these are family, these are pieces of Ken. And you all know, not only did he was a champion of his friends, but he was also an archivist, meaning we have a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff and a lot of books and, precious mementos. When I met him, it was the ASN paper time, so you all heard about that. What he told me was that he was having a spiritual awakening, an opening, and he was just perceiving the world very differently, even nature. He wasn't really a nature guy, as Elaine was saying. He was but he was starting to really see things differently. I was in love with that, I was in love with this bright-eyed, the twinkly eye that Faye was saying, he had such a beautiful smile and laugh. And he could just make you feel really relaxed and comfortable. We used to call each other my accomplice back before we had a kid. We have a lifetime of, milestones, those big moments that you have. For example, just upstairs in the Ontological Hysterical Theater, we got married. And on the set, it had to be on the set of the last play. It was the end of the season, and we got in there. I walked through a peacock that was probably as big as, as big as the theater. And we had this really beautiful fusion. We had a traditional Persian or Iranian ceremony, but in this theater set with these skulls and everything is black. And that's something that my family was a little freaked out about. Bless their hearts. They're watching on Zoom. My dad's gone. Bless my father. But that was just what it was. It was just all sort of mixed and unconditional. Lynn mentioned a lot about the parents, and I really being with Ken has been about loving and caring for his family, like mine. His parents, Fred and Helen, very dear to me. I spent, more time than with my own family, actually, with Ken's family. We were together when his mother passed, and it was a beautiful moment, like one of those lifetime bonds that you will always remember. He was my saint, my angel, when I gave birth to Keon, our son. I needed help, and Ken was right there. And with the calm gravity of Jupiter, he looked at me and he said, "You need to call in your guides." It was really powerful and convincing to me, and it happened very quickly. So he was teaching me that just intuitively. He knew what to do in a birth. And since his passing, that moment actually has been really coming to me a lot, because his passing, which I was there for at the last moments and his last conscious moments, was like a birth. And I was there for him. I'm so privileged. I want to mention our son, Keon. And I think all of you who know him know that there's no love greater than Ken's love for Keon. And Keon tells me that he's actually the one who loves Ken the most. Out of all of us here, Keon loves Ken the most. And on that note, I just want to encourage everyone when you think about Keon, because I know all of you are so kind and so generous and thoughtful and reaching out. So when you think about him with love and with like a kind of like a empowered feeling, because that's what he wants. That's what we want. We are sad. I can't speak for him directly, but he's an amazing kid. He's teaching me so much. And through this child, although our relationship changed, it evolved over time, we became really fiercely together, actually, because of our kid. It was all about him. It is all about him. And like we totally changed our perspectives. If we were stubborn, kind of like set in our ways, we had to change. We had to give a little, move, be flexible. So that love, like it's mutual. And, I kind of was resistant. Of course, I'm stubborn. Ken was stubborn. But we learned to love. We grew. And we were, in our final moments together when he was conscious, please know that I reminded him how much we all love him. Everyone, we love him, and especially Keon, and how much, how similar to his father he is. I wanted him to be able to let go and to be trusting that I got Keon. I told him, I have him. It's all going to be good. So Lynn came really fast. Lynn and Stephen came from California on an overnight, and we were in the ICU with him. It was his very final moments. He was in a coma at that point, and his blood pressure was dropping. And Keon and Stephen were rushing to get there, they were delayed. Lynn had to go be with them, and I was like, holy moly, the blood pressure is dropping. So I sang to him as loudly as I could, and his blood pressure went up. And I sang louder, more loudly, and it went up. And in time for all four of us to be together surrounding him. And I don't know, it was crazy. I mean, Kian only had 24 hours to realize what was happening. But it was, we were all together with him in love and singing joyfully. So with that, I will offer you what I played in E, please. Flor das águas, da onde vens, para onde vai? Vou fazer minha limpeza no coração, está meu Pai. Flor das águas, da onde vens, para onde vai? Vou fazer minha limpeza no coração, está meu Pai. A morada do meu Pai é no coração do mundo, onde existe todo amor e tem um segredo profundo. A morada do meu Pai é no coração do mundo, onde existe todo amor e tem um segredo profundo. Este segredo profundo está em toda a humanidade. Se todos se conhecerem aqui dentro da verdade. Flor das águas, da onde vens, para onde vai? Vou fazer minha limpeza no coração, está meu Pai. Flor das águas, da onde vens, para onde vai? Vou fazer minha limpeza no coração, está meu Pai. A morada do meu Pai é no coração do mundo, onde existe todo amor e tem um segredo profundo. A morada do meu Pai é no coração do mundo, onde existe todo amor e tem um segredo profundo. Este segredo profundo está em toda a humanidade. Se todos se conhecerem aqui dentro da verdade, este segredo profundo está em toda a humanidade. Se todos se conhecerem aqui dentro da verdade. Thank you, Stephen. So I would like to invite our dear friend Helen Kramer to the stage. Helen is a new family member. And it's not an exaggeration to say that, but Kian was very Lucid the night before Ken passed away, and he asked for Helen. So she's helping us communicate with Ken.
It is an incredible honor and a very tender one to be able to share with you the messages that Ken is sending and to share them with Keon, because I can't imagine Ken loving anybody or anything more than he loved his son. When he would call me up, he would call me when he was making dinner, and he'd say, "I'm making dinner for my son." And the love would just come through and illuminate the whole room. So I was incredibly surprised and touched when I got a call on a Saturday night, May 11th, from Carmel and Keon, who I had only met once the prior Thanksgiving, to say that Ken was getting ready to leave his body. And I just could not believe the openness with both of them, because we really didn't know each other very well. And that night at 3:30 in the morning, Ken's spirit came and asked me to help him leave his body. And it was a remarkable experience. Took a tremendous amount of energy. I was grateful to be able to do it. And when I spoke to my teacher, who taught me how to heal and do these things, she said, when somebody is a bodhisattva, it takes a lot of energy to have them leave their body. So I want you to know he is a bodhisattva, and he's here for everybody, everybody. And he spoke to me, he speaks to me, and he gives me messages like, Kian's having a hard time in school today. And then I talk to Kian and we work on it. And when there was a pandemic, and all the people I knew who had kids were just bemoaning, my poor children, they can't go to school, they're not socializing, and now they have the global warming, and what are their lives going to be like? And I said to Ken, how do you feel about your son living through this? And he said, I trust my son will be part of the solution. So I'm telling you all, stay tuned. This is a remarkable being, and I am so touched and grateful to be able to share with Carmel and Keon this energy that has gone through him and his opening up. He was saying the other night he couldn't sleep very well. I said, well, why don't you put on, you listen to on your phone and listen to YouTube. So he's listening to a psychic speaking, and the psychic said, you can ask your angels and your guides for anything that you want. So Kean said, I asked my father if I could just stay in my heart all the time. And he had some difficulty with peers at school who were bullying. He said, I felt it open up and everything changed when I went to school that day. And everybody was sweet and loving. And whenever something comes up, he'll say to me, tell me, what's my frequency? And if I say his frequency is low, he says, well, I got to get rid of this fear so I can open up. So Ken gave me a message to give to everybody today. If you can remember, resurrect a memory of any time that you had with Ken that was moving to you, anything that you saw about him that you loved or admired, and imagine when you see it that you are looking in the mirror. Whatever beauty he had, he wants you to feel this is who you are. So he is here for everybody. I had some unpleasant oral surgery for about 2.5 hours 2 weeks ago. And I put my headset on my phone and I was listening to Elton John. Ken appeared and he danced, he twirled me, he dipped me, and I'm laughing and having fun. And the surgeon saying, "Oh, you're doing great, you're doing great." Well, it wasn't me. I had a lot of help. So anytime that you need help, just know that he is here. He's here for all of us. And I know that it's a kind of chaotic and maybe troublesome time in the culture, but this is part of an opening up for humanity. And so many healers and psychics are getting the same message. This is a time of opening up. So you can rely on Ken and use him as a support, not to get frightened by it, not to get angry, but to just let the transition happen, because Ken wants it for all. This is how he lived his life, and this is how he's living now. This is his energy now for all of us. So thank you.
It's not every day that you get to kind of remember the depth and complexity of our time by the passage of a friend. It's been a really eerie year from many perspectives. And tonight reminds me of one of the last conversations I had with Ken. It was always kind of what I like to call a kind of hyper-dendritic scene with Ken. Like, conversations would go in many places. Whether it be a late night borscht soup at Veselka, or the last time I saw him there was a cafe called Leah on Portaloo Avenue, if I remember correctly, and Ken had texted me saying he wanted to meet at a cafe nearby called Bad Therapy, and I was like, that's not the vibe. Let's go to Leah. It's a little brighter, but more sunlight. So he shows up, and I was having a benefit, as one does these days for healthcare, for the band Bad Brains. And HR, the singer from Bad Brains, had some health issues, so we put together a big benefit for him. And Kim came to the concert that night and was jumping around, like thrashing. I don't know if you guys know Bad Brains demographically, I'm not sure, but they're punk rock. You can go punk rock. And so we raised a significant amount of money for HR, the singer from Bad Brains' healthcare. Ken texted me the next morning saying, I haven't had that much fun in ages. And I was like, wait a second, you're still wearing that white jacket. It was one of these things, a couple years before this year, I had gotten, as a gift, a white denim jacket for Ken. And I was like, for a while, he's going for this preppy vibe, wearing like a purple with squares kind of preppy. I was like, try a Levi's jacket, like little bit of a different flavor. And so if you notice the photographs, he's always wearing this white denim jacket. So I gave him that, and I was like, hey, that was, So when I saw him that afternoon, the sleeves of the jacket had been frayed. And I was like, we gotta get you a new jacket, Ken. And I was like, what else is going on? And so the conversation ranged from, I was like, well, Netanyahu's like King Herod 2.0, working with Augustus, where when the Romans had occupied Israel, and they're just looking for a new temple, this sort of apocalypse vision of the Middle East. And we would end up getting to these long, sort of, again, like hyper-dendritic conversations that were very resonant with William Gibson's phrase, the future is already here, it's just unevenly distributed. And it was one of those things when you read his book, Multimedia with Randall Packer, that Laurie Anderson wrote the coda, and she's an old associate. And these kinds of gatherings are catalyzers, and I think that they celebrate Ken's sense of continuous dynamic change. And, it's a rare thing. It's a different New York. It's a different time. Ken represented a kind of a bridge between generations, from the literary culture of his family to the open sensibility he always had celebrating new voices. Again, like the philosophical concept of what Theodore Adorno would like to call the dialectic of enlightenment. So, from my perspective, today is a celebration of Ken from the viewpoint of the conversation isn't over. It's a new dialectic. And I think he's a catalyzer, someone who really gave people permission to be their best self, permission to think about infinite potentiality. And it's an eerie moment because we're in an era of incandescent cynicism. the politics of our time, the cultural impact of software, digital media, and above all, social media. One could argue this last election, dark money, et cetera, and Elon Musk owning Twitter, for example. These are all things that his book eerily kind of gave us a better tool to understand. That was one of his first pieces of work. When I first moved back to New York, I lived in Paris for several years in the 90s, and I lived above a place called the Shakespeare Bookstore. And when I moved back, Kim was like, hey, I was looking for a new apartment, it was crazy busy, and Kim was like, you can just crash on the couch, here's the keys, don't worry about it. And these kinds of things, I'm sure all of us have had that moment where you're looking for a new apartment, New York is always difficult, everything takes a lot more effort, and you have a friend that says, hey, it's all good, here's the living room, make yourself at home. And I was usually in New York for like 2 or 3 days at a time, and then gone for like a couple of weeks. But the door was always open. And those are things where you just remember there's that kind of, again, another cultural term, cultural capital. He was rich in the currency of the imagination, being able to really rethink how these kinds of, these unanticipated collisions between culture and potentiality would generate new perspectives. And I'd like to say, I miss him. It's a really, I saw him one day, he was jumping around at a punk rock concert, and a couple of days later I get a text from Carmel and Lynn, his sister. And, just really shocking. But I do think that he would want us to think that this is a potential for rethinking the potential of what he was kind of, catalyzing. So I guess I don't want to be in the sense of the Western sense is to kind of have that moment of weeping, but I think he might go for the Indian or South Asian approach. Like one time I was in India for New Year's Eve on the River Ganges, and we saw a funeral, and I thought it was a celebration. And they carry a body to the river and light it on fire. And it's not the wildest New Year's Eve I've ever had, but it's still pretty powerful to see that. The sense is that it's a renewal. The river carries you, and the conversation goes. As James Joyce would have said a long time ago, river run. So Kin, I think, would invite us to step into that river and never have the same step. So thank you all for putting this together tonight. Sorry for choking up a little bit, but yeah, it's just really still kind of a shock. So I just want to say thank you for putting this together, and I think he would really celebrate the idea that this is a beginning of a conversation and not a sense of closure. So thank you.
This is really a special place. I'm so glad that we were able to do this celebration in this extraordinary place. Ken had a long history here, as did I. I met him, I guess I met his father first in the summer of 77 or 78. Allen Ginsberg asked me to take care of his home office while he and his secretary were away for the summer. So I stepped into that world, and one of the things was involved with that was Allen gave away. A lot of people don't know this. Allen Ginsberg gave away most of what he earned. He had something called a committee on poetry, and if you were a young poet, you were in trouble, you couldn't pay your rent, that he would help out. Timothy Leary needs a lawyer, Mary Baraki needs a lawyer, so on and so forth. So part of it was giving money to people. And there was a writer called Yakov Lind whose son was very sick, and he was a friend of Fred's. Fred was his publisher. And so Fred came around to pick up a check from me at the Ginsberg office. I got to know Fred. Really just an extraordinary man. I was privileged to know him for the rest of his years. And soon after that, I met an energetic young man with a tie and a jacket and a briefcase bouncing around Alan's office. He must have been about 16 or 17. And I being, like 22 years old and much more mature and cool. And I played it cool, but we got to be very close over time. We wound up being actually the odd couple, that scenario, the two divorced men, sharing an apartment. We went through a lot. Much more than I could rehearse here. And one of Ken's last things, he helped me with my writing. He's like, I have an editor. He's with me as an editor, among other things. I have a wonderful editor in my spirit realm. So one of the first songs that I sang with Allen Ginsberg is this. It's called Gospel Noble Truths. It's a Buddhist anthem. And it's a sing-along, and I know Ken sang this many times with me and Alan and everyone else. It works as a sing-along. And we'll finish with this. The Buddhist teachings that Alan pursued, basically in the Tibetan tradition, life is really preparation for death. And you need to get that straight. That's what you're working on. And one of the things that happened soon after I met Alan, his father died. And Alan was speaking to his teacher, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, about his father's death. And Trungpa said, let him go and continue your celebration. So that was always Ginsberg's advice on someone passing. Let him go and continue your celebration. So this is Alan's take on that, the four basic principles of the Buddhist teaching. And it's a sing-along. It's really hard to do, Carmel and Lynn wanted to have a sing-along, and it's really hard to do a sing-along at a remembrance of the passing, unless you're doing hymns, So I hope this is okay, and I hope you can sing along with me. You can just echo the lines or join in whenever you want. You can echo every line. You can echo every fourth line. But please sing along. And as Alan used to say, if you think you can't sing, sing louder. It'll be better. And the words, do we have the words? Oh, yeah. Born in this world, you got to suffer. Everything changes. You got no soul. You got no soul. Try to be gay. Ignorant, happy. You get the blues. You eat jelly roll. You eat jelly roll. There is one way. You take the high road. In your big wheel, 8 steps you fly. Look at the view, right to horizon. Talk to the sky, act like you talk, work like the sun, shine in your heaven. See what you done. Come down and walk. Sit, you sit down. Breathe when you breathe. Lie down, you lie down. Walk where you walk. Talk when you talk. Cry when you cry. Lie down, you lie down. Die when you die.
touch when you touch. Think what you think. Let go, let it go slow. Earth, heaven, and hell. Die when you die, die when you die, die when you die, die when you die. Lie down, you lie down, lie down, you lie down. Die when you die, 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 die when you die. Lie down, you lie down, and you die when you die.
Thanks, brother. Thank you so much.
This has been an extraordinary evening. Thank you all for being here. I noticed one theme. We've lost someone we love very much, but people are saying in their own individual ways that he's still here, he's still present, he's still informing us, he still is with us. As Steve Taylor said to me earlier, Ken used to edit these things, and now he has to internalize Ken. He has to bring the Ken that existed in the world and kind of inhabit that, live the Ken he's lost and have that Ken edit his papers now. So Ken is still present, and I thought it's good to close this out in the tradition of revolutionary movements from Latin America who use this to recognize the continuing powerful presence of a fallen comrade. So just go with me on this. Ken Jordan, presente. Ken Jordan, presente. Ken Jordan, presente. Ken Jordan, presente. Thank you. We're wrapping up. It's been 2 hours. We have a reception to follow around the corner at Helen's place. Thank you. And I hear there's another clandestine one near the Blue Man, above the Blue Man space. So we can. Andy Harrison can speak to that. But I wanted to draw attention to 2 things in the program. One, the Legacy Channel, which was mentioned earlier by Surya. And also the GoFundMe that the family and friends of Ken have put together. Just a quick note on that. Ken, as we've heard, put everything he had into his work and then died very suddenly. As you might imagine, but this was not just an emotional shock, but a financial one. So there's a GoFundMe. And friends stepped into the gap, and it is now at $49,000 of the $60,000 goal. So that's fantastic. Thanks to many of you in the room. So please, if you can, give generously to that. Let's try to get that closer to the 60,000. Folks up here on the stage and the Lucid project that was Ken's last legacy will be sharing the funds in some way. All well spent and to a very beautiful and noble cause. So thank you for considering that. Would anyone else like to say a few words?
Just only thanks to Carmel and to Lynn, two such beautiful spirits. And thank you everybody for being here. Let's go share some time together.
only person in the world to be the sole survivor of their family. As a matter of fact, I know that I'm actually in good company in this room. And I'm not out the other side by any stretch, but there are some people who are walking this with me, my husband and my dear friend Elizabeth, who is with me like every day, just walking through this. And I know that I'm not alone, and it's so clear that being in this room with you, that your contributions are helping me walk through this, and I'm so grateful to you, to all of you who have shown up in the capacity that you could show up, and because of you, we created what we had tonight. The way that you all showed up, the way that you showed up, the way that you people have shown up, and are sitting here, and this person right here, who we've talked every day for, weeks, and Carmel is an amazing producer. It's like, of all of the talents that she has, this absolutely came to the surface, and so, Carmel, I'm grateful to you for making this happen. Thank you so much.
Producer, the pro here, and I don't know what to say, but we are here together. We have a small but mighty family. We are here, and we actually have a very large family when you think about it, because we've spent, when I was married and living with Ken, we spent holidays and vacations with Elaine, and we spent Christmas with Andrew. We'd go for latke and vodka, and then we'd go to Elaine's for a beautiful family dinner. And I met Elaine when she was pregnant. Her baby bathed in our little bathroom sink. It was really cute and kind of gross. The sink was kind of dirty. No. Sorry. It's just so precious, all these people and all of you all. I can't, living with Ken, it's work. So being family with him, if you're there, you are enmeshed in his work, and so, and I feel very kindred with all his colleagues, through the hard times too, because we're here now, and we are together now. Matt Cohn, who I have to thank fiercely, it's my favorite word tonight. Matt Cohn did that video, right? So it was beautiful, and I saw a Facebook post that he did. He's so smart. Check him out. But if you're observing the insanity, you're not alone. And let's pick up on that. You're not alone, because through uncertainty, we have each other, and when we stick together, anything is possible. And usually it's when you feel kind of isolated and lonely that you freak out. So I just want to give a huge, infinity-sized thank you to Dance Space Project. Please, let's give it up for them. Dance Space. This right here, this holy place, is where the highest, the most amazing, how shall I say, the best contemporary dance is presented. It's not an exaggeration, it's for real. So we are really honored and blessed to, and this is thanks to especially Judy Hussey Taylor, who introduced me and Ken. And I just have no words. You all know how special it is that we are here in this space. So thanks to Dance Space, and I mentioned Matt Cohn, our brilliant filmmaker who did that montage. We were blown away. And Sven Ferberg, our maestro tech, who coincidentally was Paul Miller's tech, on the road, and that's another synchronistic beauty of our friends. And
Michael Robinson, thank you for designing the flyer and this beautiful program. Thank you, and thank you for showing up from like the Gang of Four, the old days, with a lot of like a big heart, because I felt like, oh, where's the old crew? But Michael came. And then Surya Kramer for the Legacy Channel and for bringing Ken's vision like this. Everyone's like, oh, my kids and screens and all this. Come on, like, anyway, so there's a resurrection happening, and I just want to thank all of you. I know some of you traveled very far internationally, which reminds us to renew our passports before, you know. But thank you for coming and for just coming out in New York City. It's a schlep any way you look at it. So we really, this vibe that we created here is very special. And obviously Helen, you know, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And the volunteers, obviously, people, you know, came to help out. So on a logistical note, we're going to have a reception, and I don't know what time it is.
It's now a quarter of 8. The reception, I believe, starts at 9.
Well, we're having pizza delivered at 8:30. 8:30. So can I just get a quick show of hands? Who's planning to come to Helen's? It's the corner of East 18th and Park. Just to get a kind of, like, we can get more food if we need it. So bring your own beverage, everyone's welcome. Figure out the directory. So we look forward to mingling a little bit and then seeing everyone there. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Everyone is trying to get to the bar. Name of the bar. The bar is called Heaven. The band in heaven, they play my favorite song. Play it one more time. Play it all night long. Oh, heaven, heaven is the place, a place where nothing ever happens. Heaven, heaven is a place where nothing ever happens. There is a party, everyone is there. Everyone will leave at exactly the same time. When this party's over, it will start again. Will not be any different. Be exactly the same. Oh, heaven is a place where nothing ever happens. When this kiss is over, it will start again. Will not be any different. Will be exactly the same. It's hard to imagine that nothing other could be so exciting, could be this much fun. Oh, heaven, heaven is a place where nothing